once I connect, evidently. There we go. All right, and so we should be live. So I'm assuming you all just got a message that says this session is being recorded, and anyone that joins after this point will see that as well. So hi again, my name is Rick Bray. I just want to make sure if you're joining us, here is the link to today's slide deck. You can also see it's down in the corner, or in the yellow box there, bit.ly/BT Pear Deck. But I realize for some districts, bit.ly might be blocked. I am going to add, well, we'll get there in just a second. But there's my contact information. If you have any questions along the way or after this session is over, please, by all means, I'll stick around, but feel free to email me. I have a note here on the right-hand side. You may want to pin the video tab. If you're using a web browser to join us today on Zoom, you can pin that tab by right-clicking on the tab itself in your browser and selecting pin. That's going to help as we move between different environments today. It may be helpful to pin it so that way you don't accidentally close the tab and lose the recording. So let's get started. Go forward. There we go. So just a couple session protocols to think about as we go forward. I mentioned it earlier, you do have some controls on the bottom of your Zoom discussion where you can mute your audio and video. So you'll notice you may have to move the screen, or if you're on an iPad, I think it might be up at the top. But you can mute your audio and video. If you're not comfortable showing your video, that's completely fine. You're welcome to keep that off or on, whatever you're most comfortable with. But as far as the muting audio, as we go through this, you're certainly welcome to ask questions. And as things come up, seek clarity as you need. But what I would ask is if you can mute yourself when you're not talking, that just really helps to keep a lot of the background noise down for everybody. And then you can unmute yourself when you want to ask a question. And sorry, I'm getting distracted. And then what we typically use as a protocol is after you're done speaking, you say thank you, and then remute yourself just to kind of keep with that going. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mute everybody, and that just helps again with that background noise, but you should have the ability to unmute yourself. Again, please feel free to use the chat feature, ask questions, and work with each other to find solutions. You will notice today it was on the first slide deck. It's on this one as well. Let's go back a second. Today's slide deck is licensed with the Creative Commons license with attribution for non-commercial content. So you are more than welcome to take this material and tweak it, spin it to work with you. I give you free permission to use my materials. All I ask, number one, is that it's for a non-commercial purpose, meaning you are not directly making money off of that. And number two, that you give me credit for these resources because they are all mine. So with that said, our little data privacy thing that I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about as we move forward, but recently in January, some new legislation was passed in New York State around data privacy for both students and teachers. So when it comes to educational technology platforms, it is best to ask your district whether you can use platforms going forward before you start using them with students. And Pear Deck is absolutely one of those cases. So when it comes to our disclaimer, please keep in mind that this platform, Pear Deck, it is a free platform. If parents wish, they can create individual accounts for their children. Teachers, please refer to your district's individual policies regarding the protection of students' personally identifiable information and the use of EdTech tools before creating student accounts. With that said, Pear Deck is a free platform. It also has a paid side that districts can buy into. And what we're going to be focusing on today is the free side. I don't think I'm going to be showing anything that's on the paid side. So therefore, everyone has access to it. But before you use it, please be sure to check with your district. So a couple things again to showcase if you haven't seen it already. This site is our virtual professional learning where you probably heard about this session from. Please feel free to check that out as the time progresses. It's awesome to see that we have at this point 15 teachers joining. That just warms my heart to see that you're all willing to learn this. So I want to take respect your time in that one and use it as most effectively as possible. But there's all sorts of information here Along with our PLIC team, we have virtual office hours on that same page. This, both the diagram and the link in the slide deck, the title, go out to this page directly. And you can set up virtual office hours if you need time to meet with one of us and go over some questions. We're more than willing to help. So let's make it count. Here we go. Pear Deck. You may have heard about it. I know one of my colleagues just last hour did a session on Nearpod. Nearpod and Pear Deck are very, very similar. We wanted to offer both because some districts use one, some choose the other, and some actually use both. But Pear Deck is a tool that works alongside with Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint, but please be mindful, PowerPoint has to be the online version, not the software that's downloaded on your machine. And it makes those presentations more interactive. And like I say here, the decks, they can be made two ways. One can be by, and this is an active link, you can go out to Pear Deck's website and create from there, or you can use the Google Slide add-on to build the Pear Deck content inside a Google Slide. And we're actually going to get into that a little bit as part of today's webinar, how we make that. If you're not familiar, this link, how to get the add-on, is a video that walks you through step-by-step how to get the Pear Deck add-on and add it into your Google Slides so you can build that. Also, there's an introductory slide set dedicated strictly to Pear Deck that's been made. It shows a lot of the different things we're going to talk about today. And a YouTube tutorial playlist, which those two kind of go hand in hand. So please feel free to access those as you go forward with this. So when I think about Pear Deck, really the best way I can describe it is it takes a slide deck, much like this one, a Google Slides slide deck, and builds some interactivity into it. Right now, you're watching what I'm doing, and if we weren't on a video call, thinking about a lesson, there's not a lot of interaction built in. But with Pear Deck, I have these options down here that I took a screenshot of. You can ask students questions where they respond via writing a text, like they type out an answer. You can do multiple choice questions. Please keep in mind, the multiple choice is more of a poll in the sense that it doesn't grade itself. There aren't right answers. It will just show as a graph what students are selecting in terms of an answer. Number, for my math people out there, that's going to do like I think the term is a whisker box plot, where it shows what students are answering based on their number, and it kind of averages them out a little bit. So it could be an estimation type question. Website allows you to take a website and embed it inside your slide deck. I would caution though with that one, test the link first. Not all links can be embedded into oh, I see the chat's blowing up. Thank you so much for helping out with that chat. Not all your links can be embedded into Pear Deck. So that one's kind of hit or miss. But the draw and the draggable, draw is great. You'll see one of those in a second. It turns the whole screen into an annotatable surface. You can draw on that surface. And draggable, it lets you put on icons that are moved around the screen to wherever you want to go. So I can make any slide I want that type of question just by clicking on that button when I'm using Pear Deck. So with that, I thought, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. That's the YouTube link. You might want to give it a try. So if you want, this was the purpose of being careful with your tabs. If you want to open up a new tab on your browser, and if you go to, sorry, I shouldn't have done that, go to the website that's at the bottom, joinpd.com. So you can just put that right up in your address bar of your browser, joinpd, like peardeck.com. And you'll notice I put a little screenshot. If you get a picture with the pear and it says enter code, you're at the right place. So joinpd.com. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of the presentation to kind of show you some things here. So if you're familiar with Google Slides, traditionally, I hit the present button, and that would make it presentable for my students. This is a Google slide deck, but I've built pieces of Pear Deck into it. And we talked a little bit about the add-on for Google Slides. So you'll notice at the top of my screen, it says add-ons. And because I zoomed in, it didn't like what I clicked on. I have the Pear Deck add-on installed. If you don't, you can find it under Get Add-ons. And again, that video that was a couple slides, the previous slide, That video will show you step by step how to get this add-on there. So I'm going to say open my Pear Deck add-on, and this is the part. A lot of teachers were so used to just clicking present and go. That's great for a normal Google slide. Once I have the Pear Deck piece built in, I want to click this Start Lesson button inside the add-on. And if you're all on that screen, it asked you for a code. So let's go there. This is how it would be with my students. I just have to log in. Do, 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 do. So normally, when I would go into a classroom, and I realize we're in a different environment right now than a traditional classroom. Excuse me, I don't need this one. But here's that link. Now, if you could all just, do you see the link that says GPCAX? Is that on your screens? Can you nod if you see that? Okay, good. I thought it was still sending. Thank you so much, especially because I just lost my second monitor. That's awesome. There we go. We're back. So that's where that link comes from, joinpd.com. And when it asks for the code, it's GPCAX, or Green Pears Conduct Acidic X-rays. That is a code that is associated with this session. And if you notice down here, I can see this number ticking up here. It's showing me how many students are connected to this lesson right now. So this is certainly one way we could share the lesson with our students. And now that we're getting into the meat of it, I am completely comfortable. If you all have a question at some point, please feel free to unmute yourself and say like, hang on, where did this come from? How do we do this? Because I'd like to think that I'm gonna answer all your questions, but I know that I'm not. so that's open invitation to ask away. Now that I see we have 12 of us here and there's 17 in the webinar, so I'm gonna hang on just another second, but I'll show you where you can always find that code to get there. Now you are in Pear Deck, and what I'm expecting is that your screen looks like this, right? That Pear Deck screen. So what Pear Deck does, it allows me to control the slides, and you'll notice when I advance my slide, it advances on your slide as well. So I have control over that in this case. I'm going to go back here for a second. That is what's called teacher control, right? So I'm in control. We're also going to look at student paced mode, where you'll be able to move backwards and forwards. But here's where the interactive piece comes in. These are all just Google Slides that were here. What's great is the links are still active on your end. So if you were to click a link, it will actually take you out there on your side, right, for the students. One thing to be mindful of, if you notice that I move a screen and your screen doesn't respond, when you click on a screen, it kind of locks you in that place. And I think the idea is you might need some more time to process and think your way through it. So you're just getting a little bit more time. If you click your screen again, it should snap to where we are, just in case that comes up. Sometimes that happens with students. So here's an example of an interactive slide, right? And this is a question that I typically ask, and you're welcome to answer it. I believe you're going to have a text box off to the right-hand side where you can enter in your response. And my question that I'm asking, you should be able to see it on the left side of your screen, is what's something you are hoping to learn from this lesson? So if you wouldn't mind, feel free to type in your response on the side. And I'll give you a second to enter in that response. I'm going to put the slide deck back in the chat and open the mic up if there's any questions. So I'll be right back. Okay, so one question that I get is how do I send my response? That's one that I often hear in these kinds of sessions. Just by typing your response, I have the responses, right? You'll notice when I move my mouse, there we go. I get some controls down here at the bottom, one of which is to show responses. And again, this is if you're not familiar with Pear Deck. I can post that up here. Oh boy. Well, I just learned I have a crack in my screen. Cool. That's not good. Yep, so we see how to pin. I can see all these responses here. And the thing that I want to showcase is that they're all anonymous, right? There's no data there's no names on this side. I am tracking your data in the sense that when you logged in, it gave me your name. So that's part of a paid side, but I can also look at it this way if I chose. Right? So all different things happening here, and I can hide those responses. So I'm going to go back and check those out in a little bit just to see if there's any questions that came up. But again, I want to get into that student side of it. Okay. Yep. So it is a little tricky sometimes. I noticed someone mentioned doing Pear Deck on a phone can be difficult because it requires a Google account. And so trying to pop between places, I totally get it. That can be a little tricky. So this was a text-based question. Another option that I can run is here, is a drawing question, right? So what you should see on your side is down on the bottom, there's a bunch of colors that you can select. I think on the left-hand side is like a ruler looking thing where you can control the size of the brush stroke that you're using. And you can go to town drawing on this one. So kind of fun. And oh, I did make a note here. I'll give you another second because I'm going to see if I can figure out where this crack came from. But it does say at the top, if you wouldn't mind drawing something, because there is a demonstration piece I'd like to show with this one, but please be aware that we're going to see it and that we are recording. Okay. Okay, nope, we're in good shape. It's not a crack. It's because my computer's working too hard. Whoo! So let's do this. Okay, see if that helps. So when I show responses, here's one of the things I really like about drawing, is that I can, and this was an awesome example I saw in a science teacher's classroom where it was a draw an example of a renewable or non-renewable energy source. And it was, the reason I loved it was because students then had to guess what type of energy it was. And you're also noticing you can change things on the fly. But what kind of energy it was and whether it was renewable or non-renewable. So it was kind of a guessing game. I can also show that as, it is cool, you're right. I can show it as this tiled view. And that's all done here in the upper right-hand corner. List layout, grid layout, or overlaid is something you can do with drawing. And this is going to be a little complicated, but it mushes it all together. Right? And in this particular case, maybe not such a great example for showing overlay, but where it is nice is if I had a map and asked students to circle a certain feature, or if I put an ELA passage. Oh, now see, here's what I'm afraid of, is that you're not listening because I see you still drawing. So there, I locked your screens. Oh my gosh, how did he lock the screens? Right down here. And I see some of you laughing now. You've heard that joke before. But in that case, it took away your ability to change it. And it lets us focus on here for a second, which is, I always do this as a joke anyway. But the overlay, if I put an ELA text passage up, and I said circle a particular piece of the sentence or claim and evidence, those sorts of things, I can very easily overlay everyone's answers together and see if we're all in the same place. Or if I were to graph a mathematical relationship, we should all kind of graph the same points is the idea. That's where that can be really helpful. So along with this hide response idea, or I'm sorry, lock screens, in case you haven't seen this or heard this before, this is a draggable slide. Now I'm going to lock your screen for just a second, and this is an example of a strategy we saw a teacher use. Right now, by doing that, you're focused on what I'm saying in the question instead of moving the flag around and seeing what can happen, because it's easy to do. So what I'm going to ask is when I unlock your screens, you'll see that there is a flag somewhere on your screen. You should be able to click and drag that flag and move it to, like I say, your approximate location. And if you're not in New York State, feel free to drop it in the other column. And I can show all those responses here. And we can see that for the most part, everyone's in the Broome area. And yep, perfect. You got it, right? So I can see that. And again, eventually someone is going to like with the flag. You can do that. It's okay. But that's one of the reasons. Yep, there it goes. That's why we might lock the screen to keep that from happening. But just some different style questions that can come up with Pear Deck. Also, typically not showing the responses anymore usually helps curb that type of behavior. So So far, let me pause for just a second and see if there's any questions out there on what you've seen so far, because we're about to get into the student-paced side of things. So if you have a question, please feel free to pop it in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask that question. Okay, I'm either doing a really good job or we're really bored. I'm not sure. We'll see. So the student side of things, right? There we go. Teacher paced is how Pear Deck always started. And if we think about like our traditional classroom, and I mean not the one we're in right now, good question. I'm going to come back to that one, Tracy. Thank you. So when we think about our normal classrooms, teacher paced was how it worked. I would put the screen, put the slide deck up on the board. Students would be able to see it. We'd interact. Everything was great. But it's really good for what's called synchronous learning. Right now, we're all doing the same thing together at the same pace. So that is synchronous, we're together. Student paced gives it the ability to go asynchronous, meaning you can move forward and backwards on your own. Now, originally, teacher paced was the default mode, and student paced was activated once the session has started. But now you can control that at the time of launch. And what's awesome about this is the sessions stay live until, if you notice on my screen, I have a button down here that says end. When I hit end, that would stop the interactivity on your side. But if I were to just close this, it's going to keep going in the background. It keeps working, so the students can continue to work if they're set to student paced, right? And shout out to Sarah Bidwell from Windsor on this one, because she showed me this trick. You don't actually need that code that I gave you. That was the thing that always hung us up, right? Is, well, they need that code to join the session. They don't. I'm going to show you today how that works. But first, these three little dots right down here on my screen, when I click on that, I have the ability to turn on student paced. So just as a check-in so you can see proof in the pudding, on your side, on the controls, you don't have any buttons on the left-hand side because right now, teacher paced, I'm controlling it. But when I do this, those buttons should now appear on your side, and you can move forwards and backwards through this presentation. And all the interactivity is still there. So if you came to an interactive slide, you'd be able to write on it, draw on it, whatever I set up. Right? And if I were to go forward a slide, it doesn't change on your side because we're in student paced mode right now. However, student paced, they're all going to snap to this slide with me. So thinking about it from a teaching standpoint, one of the things we like to is with like centers-based learning, Pear Deck can be really, really helpful to start the lesson together, branch out into our groups in student paced mode, and then when I bring everyone back together for the recap, I leave student paced mode and we're all back at the same place. But in the in-between time, we can work on our own. Well, that lends itself really well right now. Because we have students working in asynchronous environments. They're not all together all the time. It just doesn't work that way. So how do we get the students the link? In the teacher-paced version, what I did today, I have a picture here of that window that you saw, and it's sneaky. This is what Sarah showed me. Down here, let me bring this back up. So right here, it says give students a link. If I click on that, it's going to copy that link to my clipboard. And then I could go to, and I know, Tracy, I'm kind of coming to your answer. I apologize for leaving you hanging. If I were to take that link and post it in my Schoology course, or my Google Classroom course, whatever learning management system I happen to be using, students can click that link and they drive right into the presentation. They don't need a code, right? So what a teacher was doing in this case, when we saw it, I'll model it here, was they would start the lesson. They would go to student paced mode and then take the link, copy it, and paste that in their Schoology course with, for example, right now we might do like COVID week 1. And then another session that they would start, COVID week 2. Because again, I can close this window and the students can still interact with that slide deck on their own time. as long as I don't hit the end button. It's still going to be working on the back end. So let me pause for a second and see if that made sense in terms of the mechanics of sharing that link out. How we doing? Any questions coming up so far?
This is Brenda. I'm sorry I joined late. Where is the end button, Rick?
Oh, sure. So it's not on your side right now, Brenda. That's a really good question. It's on the teacher's side. So I'm hoping you can see my screen, and there's a little black bar at the bottom with some controls.
I see that.
So right here is my end button over in the bottom right-hand corner.
No.
Okay, it might be, wait. Yeah, but you can see where it says student paste right here.
But I see the slide that it's where you showed us the link.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's not, okay. Let me try something a little different with you. I think I know what might be happening. Can you see it now?
Now I can, yes.
Okay, it may not have been coming through in the window. Thank you very much for bringing it up.
I have this bar down below. I think it was hiding it.
Okay, so that's a really good point. I want to show that again. Where the student paste came from was these three little dots right here. When I click that, student paste is one of the options, right? And that's how I activated it from this side. So again, as long as I don't hit that, oh, I lost my mouse. As long as I don't hit the end button in the bottom right-hand corner, this is going to be active and it's going to keep working even after I leave. Keep in mind, the students can't talk to each other here. They don't see each other's work. I see their work, right? So I'm going to stop this and go forward. Here's what's great though, and I'll show you this again. Now if you're going to, you can start a student paste right off the get-go. It used to be, again, I had to launch it, I had to turn it to student paste, then I had to copy the link. An update to Pear Deck, and I think it's because of the environment we're in, right when you say launch, it says, do you want to go teacher paste or student paste? Right from the beginning. And if you select student paste, they give you the link right here in this little pop-up window to copy and paste into your learning management system or wherever your students are going to get it. So to show you that from my side, I'm going to end this session. No, I'm not going to end this session. We're just going to open a new one. It's going to get confused, but that's okay. So, I open my slide deck in Google Drive. And once it loads, I open up the Pear Deck add-on. There we go. I'm not being patient enough. And at the point that I hit that big green button that says Start Lesson, and I think I did it correctly, so now you'll see it. It says, do you want to go with the student paste activity, or do you want to go with a teacher instructor paste activity? So the traditional way is the instructor paste, but when I do student paste, it pops the lesson up for me. And it might recognize that I already have one going. We'll see. I'm going to say, got it to that. So here's that link that I can copy. So I'll right click and copy the link. Actually, sorry. Yeah, that'll work. Oh, cool. If I click it, it copies link. That's even safer. Let's go that way. So I'll copy the link. I'll head over to my student management, learning management system, paste that link in, and then I can close that session altogether and the students can access it whenever they want. So that's using student paste mode. One of the questions that typically comes up, and we're about halfway through time, which is great. I was hoping to do some different question and answers because I'm sure there's going to be some questions that come up. One of the things that comes up is how do I view my students' responses? So to do that, you want to go to Pear Deck has a webpage, peardeck.com. And when you sign in with the same account, like your school account, the same account that your Google is associated with, you'll see here I have a number 1 you'll want to click on sessions on the top. And I picked this picture specifically. Whew, I didn't want to say purposefully because that would just be like alliteration. Because if you notice, I have like a red box that's highlighting some ideas. It tells you the different kinds of sessions that are running. The blue one is student paced, right? That means it's open and students are guiding themselves through it. The black is closed. That means it's out, but students can't join in anymore. That's one that I clicked end. We talked about that before. And then the green one is live. That means that that session is currently running somewhere and I can access it, or my students can access it if they have the link in their abilities to find, whether it's email, learning management system, whatever. But when you click here, number 2, this center row of icons is the teacher dashboard. And that's going to show you how students are responding. In the paid version, it shows you the student name associated with their response. Again, that's a paid feature. In the free version, it just shows the response. So one thing that we've talked about is it might be a good idea when students are, for example, typing a response, if they type their name in at the beginning or at the end so that we know who's responding to what, or if they're drawing, they write their name in on the drawing. But that's how I can get in, later, I can go back and look and see what my students are saying, how they're responding to different questions. Cool. Okay. Okie dokie. So I'm going to hop back. I got some questions in the chat here that I want to make sure get addressed before we move on. So one says, is there a way to set a timer on the end time for Pear Deck, like if you're in the student paced mode, like one day? You know, I'm not sure, to be very honest with you. That would be a really cool feature, I think. But what I do know is I can go into, for example, if I show you all, let's head over to Pear Deck. And I want to log in with my teacher account. Go to my sessions. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think, perfect. So I'm going to assume this is true on the free side as well. If I find a session that I want to send from student paced over to not student paced, I can click this button and say turn off student paced. So again, that's the 3 vertical dots, the nerd freckles, as Emily Kova likes to call them, one of my colleagues. And I can turn off the session of the student paced side, which would lock them to wherever I left, or I could just end the session altogether. So it might require you to go back in and do that on that side. Okay, so Brandon, you asked when I say see their work, can you see their names along with their work? That is true for the paid side of Pear Deck, and I can show you that one a little bit here, because here is today's session that we're in right now. If I open that up, and I'm going to do the drawing one because I told you all I was going to share that. Okay, got it. Don't need it. If I head over to that slide in the presentation, which this may cause it to move on your end, we'll see, but we're in student pace, so we should be okay. Waiting for responses. No. Oh, that's because, got it, right. Let's try that again. I opened the wrong one. So sorry, while I'm fuddling with this one, it will show me that. Only on the paid side though. With the free side, it's just going to show the responses with no name attached to it. What I want to stress though is on the part that is publicly visible, like the classroom projection, regardless of your version, names are never shown there. It's only on this back side, the dashboard, as they call it. So let's try, I think this is the one I'm going to want. Yep, now we're cooking. It just doesn't want to play. There we go. It has to load. So here's the picture. Sorry, thank you all for your patience on that one. Here's the picture, and right below it is the name of who it's associated with. So this name, thank you, by the way, for letting me share this. This name is only going to be shown on the paid side. The free side, it would look just like it did back here. When I say show responses, it would just like this. It would have pictures with no names associated with it. And that's true for every response in Pear Deck. The paid side associates the name, the free side does not. Cool. So there we go. Awesome. Anything else? Any other questions coming up so far? Okay. So we are in teacher paste. Let's go. Here. So that's what I'll ask. I'll kind of turn it over to you all. Are there ways you're currently using Pear Deck in your, maybe in your normal classroom, maybe in this new distance learning classroom? Or are there ways you're thinking you might try using Pear Deck with your students? Thoughts that you have, concerns that you have around that? Anything you all are thinking with that one? So Tracy, to answer your question, I can't talk. I got to stop drinking seltzer. The teacher dashboard, that could be two different things. And what I'll say is what I've shown, that is with the free version and the paid version. Again, the difference being names. Pear Deck also has the ability to control the session from a different device, which is part of the paid feature. That's really nice in a classroom when I'm walking around. However, I'm not so sure it's going to work here because we're all remote. But that is the remote control, if you will, is a paid feature. Yeah. So, Michael, I see you're bringing up looking for a way to get away from Schoology. Pear Deck absolutely can be a nice way to get information from your students, especially with this student paced ability to launch it out there. We can have the students work at their own pace. The catch is, how do we get the link to our students? And that is where Schoology can really come into play, unless you have some other avenues. But in terms of housing your material there, yeah, this could definitely be a way to work around that one. And I absolutely appreciate the stability. Without getting too far off topic, like I am a Schoology ambassador, and it pains me to see the troubles that the site's having right now. As all the other ambassadors, it's not fun, but unfortunately, it's what we got. And I know they're working really hard to fix it. So we certainly we thank you all for your patience with that one. I know it's difficult. The link can be shared anyway. So it was brought up with Remind. We can certainly do that. My only thought, I'm not incredibly familiar with Remind. So my initial thought is, if it's going to a device, like to a phone, we may want to find a way to get that link over to a Chromebook, for example, for the students, which there's lots of different ways that can happen. I don't know how well, like trying to do Pear Deck on a screen this big is not fun. Trying to draw and do all this stuff. So as long as the families have a way to get that message over to a computer, 100%, I think Remind would work. I'm just not familiar with it enough. So how about Jody, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind sharing your experience a little bit? And were you running student paced? Was it teacher paced? Just kind of curious to hear your success with it, because it sounds like it went pretty well.
Hi, this is Jody. I just learned about it yesterday, actually, from my own students who go to Windsor, my children. So they kind of taught me how to use it, actually. But I think it's pretty cool because I had a Google slide presentation already done for my kids to do each day. And my kids were having trouble with the links. So I tried putting it in the Peer deck today to see if it would go better. And I just put the link in my Google Classroom, so they clicked on the link. They were able to get to it right from my Google Classroom, no problems. And I really liked how it showed, like I had 2 out of 7 online at the time when I looked at it this morning, which was super helpful for me because we're starting to track the number of kids that we're reaching each day. So the feedback I got from my kids so far, they seem to be enjoying it. And I know my own children at home love it because they can draw on the screen. It's just, and it's more engaging for them, I think.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure, thank you.
And I know, we've had some success stories with teachers saying exactly what you said. It's a little more engaging. They can draw. And again, I'll go back to that science example I showed. Just being a former science teacher, of course, it hits a soft spot in my heart. But it was really neat to let the students draw out how they thought something was represented. And we can just get some really awesome insights into that. Oh, that's a good thing to bring up. When you're drawing, when you're doing all that stuff, if you have a touchscreen device, it's clearly going to be easier to draw than if you have a mouse or a trackpad. But you should be able to pinch to zoom on your screen to zoom in on that drawing area. So pretty cool stuff. So again, and I'm really glad that, thank you, Jody, for answering the question. So student paced, the only thing that we've talked about so far today that is strictly on the paid side is having the system automatically tag the student name to the work. Everything else we're talking about so far is fully available on the free side of Pear Deck. So I'm glad, thank you for bringing that up. Oh, good question, Jen. Is there a good library of model presentations for us newbies? Yes. And let me go here. Okay, we'll close that one, leave. I honestly don't know how to find it on their website. It's kind of hidden, but if you search out, so the company is Pear Deck, right? And an orchard is where fruit grows. So the Pear Deck orchard, right here, is where they house lessons. I don't know exactly how big of a repository of a curation this is for resources, but when I go to the orchard in Pear Deck, and if I scroll down, there's some different things that they talk about. But here are some templates that are available. And I can say, see all templates. When I go into there, they do break it down somewhere here. There we go, based on content area. So I can go into some math slides. And again, just by clicking on Google Slide, it'll take me over to the template. And I believe it is completely ready to use. You could launch it right here and now with your students. So there's not a ton of information out here, but there's some good stuff. So feel free to check out, again, that's the Pear Deck Orchard. What I'll share with y'all though, and I didn't get back to it, I apologize. It is so easy to make a Pear Deck slide. And I know sometimes that's not always, well, of course it's easy for you, Rick, you get technology. So, okay, let's go through this. It's in the video. When I'm in a slide deck that I own, right? So one that I have, I can click on add-ons, and if Pear Deck is not here, I can select get add-ons. And in there, I bet Pear Deck's going to be high up on the list because I think a lot of people are going to be grabbing it, but we'll see. Yep, there it is. If it's not here, you can search up on the top for Pear Deck. It is 2 words, but it'll get you there. And you can click on it and install it, and then it will show up in your Google Slides. So that's how I can get the add-on, by going to add-ons, get add-ons, and then search for Pear Deck. Once that's installed, this, if you remember, we said this is just a Google slide deck that I made, and there is no interactivity built into this slide at all. But, and I'll talk about this Pear Deck here in just a second. If I open up Pear Deck, I can make the slide any way I want. I can put any picture on it. I can change the color. I can do whatever I want. And down at the bottom are these 3 little buttons. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. These 6 little buttons. All I have to do to make this slide interactive is click on one of those. And if I want to change it, I click on the one I want to change it to. But for example, if I wanted to make this that drawing slide, I'm just going to click on draw, and you'll see it'll put up a little message. Especially the first time, I think it gives you an idea of what things are looking like. And if you notice, it added this banner to the bottom of my slide that says, students draw anywhere on this slide. Also, if I zoom in, it's, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Are you gonna let me zoom in? Nope, of course not. Not the way I want. Ah! Uh-oh. Go back. We'll get there. There we go. Thank you. Okay. So back to that interactive one. It does say down here, do not remove this bar. That's it. That's what makes the magic happen. As long as I don't click and delete that, I can do whatever I want to that slide. So I'm going to put it back. Maybe I want to make it text-based. Poof. It's now a text-based slide. And I can change that slide. I can do whatever I want to it. And if you remember, when we did a text, the slide was on one side and the text was over to your right. That's exactly what this one's going to do. If I were to hit start lesson and get into it, there would be a space to the right-hand side for you to write your answer. So it is, that's all it takes to make these be interactive. That's it, just to click those buttons. Okay, great question. Can you show an example of how the draggable feature might work? Yes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a new slide. And so how about, Brandon, I'm gonna throw this one back to you a little bit. Can you give me an idea, what subject or grade level are you teaching? Like what's something we would wanna make a draggable slide for?
I teach Algebra 1. So for example, if I had algebra tiles that I want the kids to drag out into their space and play with, could you do that?
Nope, not that kind of draggable. Nuts. So and that's what we always wished it was the ability, like a manipulative. It's not so much that way. What a draggable slide is going to do here is it's going to give you markers to put on the slide, and you drag those markers where you want them to be. So this was like, if you remember the map of New York State where you drag the flag, that's what this one is. Mm-hmm. So I can't, and I'm a little limited on what I can put in. So what I might offer, let's see, remind me, algebra tiles, is that like a tangram type thing, or is that a filling up space model?
They're kind of like tangrams, like an x squared would be something like this, an x would be just a single one like this, and a 1 would be just a little cube thing. Mm-hmm. And you can lay them out to show different things.
Okay, and would you want them to identify them, or do they actually have to manipulate them?
They would have had to manipulate them, but
okay. That one I'm going to struggle with. I might end up using a different platform for that one. Unfortunately, I wish I had a better one for you there. Sorry, but I'll keep thinking of it. But what I was thinking with the draggable is if I make this a draggable slide, just because this is kind of where I was going, but it sounds like it's not going to work. It might work for someone else. I can add up to, I think, 5 different things. I can change their color, and I can change what they are. And I'll show each of these different panels here in a second. So there's some different objects. There's some mathematical type things. I know that's like really vague. Some numbers, some different people kind of icons, and then just punctuation type stuff. But the reason I was asking if they identified it, it could be drag the red dot to this thing, drag the blue dot to this one, and I could give those that information in my actual slide along with the picture. So I wish I had idea. When we saw the draggable, we're like, yeah, but it wasn't quite there. So sorry on that one. Okay, so let me go back and grab again the link, because that was asked for. So I'll head back up here. And in the chat, there is the link to today's slide deck. Again, you're all more than welcome to use that, share that out. and yeah, go to town with it. But I think this is a great tool. I think it can be used really well. So any other thoughts on how we might use it, or questions that you have? Okay. Well, I tell you what, folks, we still have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to stick around if you have questions. But if you have not already, oh, great. I said links and I didn't give you the links. That's awesome. So we'll just keep talking while I do this. So if you want to, if you're doing credit for today, you can head over to ClickUp is what we're now using to track your progress with professional learning. And this link in today's slide deck, link 1, if you have not already created an account with ClickUp, you can follow that link. It will take you, oh, it might be different for me because I already have an account. Oh, cool. It'll take you to a page like this where you can enter your email address, and it's going to ask you to verify your email to create an account. Once you've created your account, you can use this other link, oops, to verify your participation today. And that's link number 2. This is one of the things I meant to do before we started. And when you click here, my screen might be a little bit different because I'm an administrator in this one, but you'll have the ability to, you can browse events, and you can also confirm attendance at an event. And when you confirm attendance at an event, it's going to ask for a course code, a session code. And today's session code I'm going to put here is FDAE76. So once again, that is the code for today, FDAE76. That is not easy to read at all. Patrick's handwriting. Shame on you, Patrick. There we go. And we'll make this nice and big so you can see it there. And so there again is my contact information if you want to reach out. My name, my email, and if you're on Twitter, my Twitter handle is Mr. ChemGeek. You are more than welcome to fire questions on as follow-up. You know, like I'm not really sure, can we sit down and talk about how to get the add-on? Can we sit down and talk about maybe some different ways to best set up the Pear Deck for this distance learning environment with student-paced features? I'm more than willing to have those conversations. Yeah, and Patty brings up a really good point in the chat. That drag feature can be used for she's saying the relative positions such as left, right, ordinal positions. Ooh, that's a word I'm not familiar with. Thanks. I'm gonna have to check that one out. But left, right, top, bottom, those sorts of things. Definitely a really nice tool to put the different flags on. So again, thank you all very much for being here. I appreciate you taking time out of your very busy days. I am going to stop the recording momentarily. This recording will be available. We're going to somehow publish it on our BT BOCES website. So if you have colleagues that weren't able to attend, they can find this recording and they can also reach out to me. But thank you all very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'm going to stop the recording, but I'll stick around for a little while if you have any questions.